The galaxy was vast and cold, a place where stars burned like distant candles against an endless black canvas. Humanity had ventured far beyond its home planet of Earth, but it was still new to the interstellar stage. The Galactic Empire, however, was ancient. Its ships were colossal, its armies unmatched, and its leader Kale Varoth was a name whispered with fear across countless worlds. For decades, humanity had avoided direct conflict with the Empire, retreating into silence whenever their paths crossed. But now, there was no escape. Aboard the Starship Odyssey, Captain Alan Hayes stood on the bridge, staring at the massive screen that showed the Empire's flagship looming ahead. It was a monstrous vessel, bristling with weapons and glowing faintly under artificial lights. To call it intimidating would have been an understatement. Alan felt his pulse quicken, though he kept his face calm. He couldn't afford to show weakness. Not here, not now. Beside him, Lieutenant Emily Dawson adjusted her glasses nervously while Commander Ryan Carter paced back and forth, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. "We're being hailed," announced Navigator Lisa Morgan, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. She glanced up at Alan for confirmation. "Do we respond?" Alan nodded, opened the channel. For a moment, static filled the room, crackling like thunder before a storm. Then, a deep voice echoed through the speakers, rich and commanding. On the screen, the image shifted to reveal Kale Varoth himself. He was tall, even seated on his throne-like chair, and clad in golden armor that gleamed as if it had been forged from sunlight itself. His eyes were sharp, piercing, and seemed to look straight through the camera lens into the souls of those watching. Flanking him were 2 rows of heavily armed guards, their faces obscured by helmets shaped like snarling beasts. "Humans," Varoth began, his tone dripping with disdain. "You dare approach my domain? Do you think your fragile existence holds any value to me?" Alan stepped forward, standing directly in front of the screen. "Supreme Leader Varoth," he said, keeping his voice level, "we are here seeking dialogue. We wish to discuss terms for peaceful coexistence between our peoples." Varoth chuckled, a low rumbling sound that sent shivers down everyone's spines. "Peaceful coexistence with you?" He leaned forward slightly, his expression one of pure mockery. "Your species is nothing more than a blight upon the cosmos. You cling to your primitive ways, squabbling over scraps of land and resources, while true civilizations rise above such pettiness. Tell me, Captain Hayes, why should I waste my time entertaining the ramblings of a lesser race?" The insult hung heavy in the air. Ryan clenched his fists, visibly struggling to keep his temper in check. Emily bit her lip, her mind racing as she tried to decipher the nuances of Varoth's words. Lisa kept her focus on the controls, ready to act if things turned violent, but Alan didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled a small, almost imperceptible curve of his lips. "If we're so insignificant," Alan replied smoothly, "then why did you bother answering our hail? Surely someone as mighty as yourself has better things to do than trade insults with lesser beings." Varetha's eyes narrowed dangerously. For a split second, the room grew deathly quiet. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed again, but this time it was colder, harsher. "You have spirit, human. I will give you that, but courage alone will not save your kind. If you seek peace, prove your worth. Otherwise—" He let the threat hang unfinished, gesturing lazily to the guards behind. Alan bowed slightly, maintaining his composure. "Thank you for your hospitality, Supreme Leader. We'll take our leave for now." Without waiting for a response, he signaled for Lisa to cut the transmission. As the screen went dark, the entire crew exhaled collectively, unaware they'd been holding their breaths. "What just happened?" Ryan asked, breaking the silence. His voice was tight with frustration. "Did we seriously just get mocked by that oversized tin can?" Emily shook her head, already typing furiously on her console. "It wasn't just mockery. There's something else going on here. Did you notice how Vorath emphasized certain phrases? Like he was trying to send a message without saying it outright. Alan crossed his arms, thinking. Maybe, or maybe he's just playing games with us. Either way, we need to figure out what he's planning. Lisa, set a course back to the fleet. We'll regroup and come up with a strategy. As the Odyssey turned away from the Imperial flagship, none of them noticed the faint flicker of movement near one of the ship's external cameras. A small drone, barely visible against the dark void of space, hovered silently before darting off toward the Empire's forces. Inside its systems, data packets containing snippets of the conversation began transmitting back to Vorath's command center. Back on the bridge, Emily continued analyzing Vorath's speech patterns. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as lines of text scrolled rapidly across her screen. Suddenly, she froze. Wait a minute. Ryan looked over her shoulder. What is it? I think I found something, she said, excitement creeping into her voice. There's a pattern here in the way he structured his sentences. It's subtle, but it matches linguistic markers used in rebellion movements. I think Vorath might not be as untouchable as he seems. Alan raised an eyebrow. Explain. Well, if I'm right, then some parts of his empire might not be as loyal as they appear. Maybe there are factions within the empire that oppose him. If we can find them and ally with them, we might stand a chance, Ryan frowned. That's a big if. What makes you so sure? I'm not sure yet, Emily admitted. But it's worth looking into. We don't have many options left, Alan nodded slowly. All right. Let's assume for now that Emily's onto something. In the meantime, we need to prepare for the worst. Ryan, double-check our defenses. Lisa, keep monitoring for any unusual activity from the Empire. And Emily. He paused, giving her a pointed look. Dig deeper. Find out everything you can about these potential rebels. As the crew dispersed to carry out their tasks, Alan remained on the bridge, staring out at the stars. The weight of their mission pressed heavily on his shoulders. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy who viewed them as little more than insects. Yet somehow, they had to find a way to survive, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity, unbeknownst to them. Their encounter with Vorath had set events into motion that would change the fate of the galaxy forever. The Odyssey drifted silently through the void, its engines humming softly as it made its way back toward the human fleet. Inside, the crew was tense but focused. Each member had their own thoughts about what had just happened with Vorath, but they all shared one thing in common: a sense of unease. The Supreme Leader's words still echoed in their minds, sharp and cutting like a blade. He had mocked them, dismissed them as insignificant, and yet somehow he had also seemed curious. Why else would he have bothered speaking to them at all? Captain Alan Hayes sat in his quarters, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy projected onto the wall. His fingers drummed lightly on the desk as he tried to piece together the puzzle. Vorath was dangerous, no doubt about that. But there was something more going on beneath the surface. Emily's theory about rebellion within the Empire lingered. In his mind, if true, it could change everything. But how could they find proof? And even if they did, how could they trust any potential allies? Alan sighed and leaned back in his chair. Leadership wasn't easy, especially when the stakes were this high. Every decision he made could mean life or death, not just for his crew, but for humanity itself. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who didn't even know the danger looming over them. They deserved a fighting chance, and he intended to give it to them. Meanwhile, in the ship's engineering bay, Sam Brooks was hard at work repairing a damaged communication array. It wasn't glamorous work, but someone had to do it. As he tightened a bolt, his eyes flicked to the diagnostic screen nearby. A series of strange signals had been picked up during their encounter with the Empire's flagship. At first, he'd assumed it was interference from the ship's systems, But now he wasn't so sure. "Hey Lisa," Sam called out, glancing toward the doorway where navigator Lisa Morgan stood reviewing star charts. "Got a minute?" Lisa walked over, her expression curious. "What's up?" "These signals we intercepted earlier," Sam said, pointing to the screen. "They're encrypted, but I think they're coming from inside the Empire's network. Could be nothing, but maybe it's worth checking out." Lisa frowned, leaning closer to examine the data. "If it's internal communication, it might tell us something useful. Can you decrypt it?" "I can try," Sam replied with a shrug, "but it'll take time. This isn't exactly beginner-level stuff." "Well, we've got nothing but time," Lisa said with a wry smile. "Let me know if you need help." As Sam got to work, Lisa returned to her station, her mind racing. She trusted Sam's instincts. He had a knack for finding things others missed. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with fire. Decrypting Imperial communications was risky business. If they got caught, it could mean war. Still, desperate times called for desperate measures. Hours passed and the crew worked tirelessly. In the linguistics lab, Emily Dawson pored over recordings of Vorath's speech, searching for hidden meanings. Her hypothesis about rebellion was based on subtle linguistic cues, but she needed concrete evidence to convince the others. Frustration gnawed at her as line after line of text yielded nothing new. Just when she was about to give up, a pattern emerged. "Wait," Emily murmured, her eyes widening. She replayed a section of Vorath's speech, isolating specific phrases. When she compared them to known rebel slogans from historical databases, her heart skipped a beat. There it was, a match. Not perfect, but close enough to suggest deliberate mimicry. Someone within the Empire was using coded language to signal dissent. Excited, Emily rushed to the bridge to share her findings with Alan. When she arrived, she found him deep in conversation with Ryan Carter. Both men looked up as she entered, their expressions grim. "I think I found something," Emily blurted out, holding up her datapad. "It's not definitive proof, but it supports my theory. Vorath's speech contains embedded messages, subtle references to rebellion. Whoever wrote it wanted us to notice." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You're saying Vorath doesn't write his own speeches?" "No," Emily replied quickly. "I'm saying someone on his staff, or maybe even higher up, is trying to send a message. Either they want us to know they're unhappy, or they're hoping we'll act on it." Alan rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "If that's true, then we might have an opportunity here. But we need more than guesses. We need solid intel." Before anyone could respond, Sam's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, you're gonna want to see this." Alan exchanged a glance with Emily and Ryan before heading to the engineering bay. When they arrived, Sam was hunched over his console, his face lit by the glow of the screen. Beside him, Lisa watched intently, her arms crossed. "What is it?" Alan asked. Sam turned to face him, excitement evident in his voice. "I managed to partially decrypt those signals. Turns out they're coming from one of the Empire's outposts, a remote station near the edge of their territory. And get this, they mention a name, Daniel Hart." "Daniel Hart?" Ryan repeated, frowning. "Who's that?" "He's a former Imperial officer," Emily explained, already pulling up information on her datapad. "He disappeared years ago after being accused of treason. Rumor has it he went underground and started organizing resistance cells against Vorath. So, we've got a lead," Alan said slowly. "An outpost, a possible rebel leader, and some encrypted chatter. That's more than we had before." "But how do we proceed?" Lisa asked. "We can't just waltz into an Imperial station and start asking questions." "No," Alan agreed. "But we can go undercover. If we disguise ourselves as prisoners or defecting soldiers, we might be able to infiltrate the outpost and make contact with Hart. It's risky, but it could work." Ryan scowled. "Undercover missions are tricky. One wrong move and we're dead. We don't have a choice, Alan said firmly. If there's even a chance we can turn the Empire's weaknesses against them, we have to take it. Prep the shuttle. We leave at 0600 hours tomorrow. The next morning, the team gathered in the hangar bay, dressed in tattered uniforms meant to resemble those of captured rebels. Their faces were smudged with dirt, and their demeanor was deliberately submissive. The plan was simple: pose as prisoners transferred to the outpost for interrogation. Once inside, they would locate Daniel Hart and gather whatever information. They could dot as the shuttle detached from the Odyssey and headed toward the outpost. Tension filled the air. Each member of the crew knew the risks involved. If they were discovered, there would be no second chances. Yet despite the danger, there was also a glimmer of hope. For the first time since meeting Vorith, they felt like they had a real shot at turning the tide. When they landed, Imperial guards greeted them with cold efficiency. The humans were marched off the shuttle and led through dimly lit corridors lined with steel walls. The outpost was eerily quiet, save for the occasional hum of machinery. Emily kept her head down, avoiding eye contact, while Ryan clenched his fists behind his back, ready to fight if necessary. Finally, they were brought to a holding cell. The door slid shut with a metallic clang, leaving them alone. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then, a voice came from the shadows. "You're not Imperial agents," it said quietly. The crew froze. From the corner of the room, a man stepped forward. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. Despite his disheveled appearance, there was an air of authority about him. "My name is Daniel Hart," he continued. "And unless I miss my guess, you're here because of me." Alan stepped forward cautiously. "We heard rumors about a rebellion. We're looking for allies." Daniel studied them for a moment, then nodded. "You've come to the right place. But be warned, the road ahead won't be easy. Vorith's grip on the Empire is strong, but it's not unbreakable. With the right strategy, we can bring him down." For the first time in days, the crew of the Odyssey allowed themselves a small spark of optimism. They weren't alone anymore. Together with Daniel Hart and his rebels, they might just stand a chance against the Empire. The holding cell was dimly lit, the faint hum of machinery echoing through the walls. Daniel Hart stood in the center of the room, his sharp eyes scanning each member of the crew. He didn't trust them yet, not fully, but he could see the determination on their faces. These humans weren't ordinary prisoners. They had come here for a reason, and that reason intrigued him. So Daniel began, crossing his arms. "You say you're looking for allies. What makes you think I'm willing to help?" Alan stepped forward, meeting Daniel's gaze. "We know about the rebellion. We've seen signs of it-coded messages, hints of dissent within the Empire. If we work together, we might be able to bring down Vorith." Daniel smirked, though there was no humor in it. "Bringing down Vorith isn't as simple as you think. He's not just some power-hungry tyrant. His rule is built on fear, yes, but also on something else, something far more dangerous." "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Daniel hesitated, then motioned for them to sit. The crew exchanged glances but complied, settling onto the cold metal floor. Daniel crouched down, leaning closer to speak in a low voice. "Vorith has an artifact," he said. "A relic from an ancient civilization. It's called the Crown of Eternity. Legend says it grants its bearer immense power control over time and space itself. Whether the legends are true or not, Vorith believes in them. And he uses that belief to keep his people in line. As long as he has the crown, no one dares challenge him." Ryan frowned. "If this crown is so powerful, why hasn't he used it to crush everyone who opposes him already?" "Because he doesn't need to," Daniel replied. "The crown is a symbol. People fear it, even if they don't understand it. That fear keeps them loyal, or at least silent. But there's a catch. The crown is unstable. Using it too much risks destroying everything around it, including Vorith himself. So he hoards it, letting its presence loom over the galaxy like a shadow. Emily leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. Do you know where it is? Daniel nodded slowly. It's kept on a desolate moon deep in Imperial territory. No one goes near it except Vorith's most trusted guards. Breaking in would be suicide. Sam raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a challenge. It's worse than a challenge, Daniel shot back. It's a death sentence. But if you're serious about taking down Vorith, you'll have to find a way to get to the crown. Without it, he'll always have the upper hand. Alan rubbed his temples, thinking. This was more complicated than he'd anticipated. The crown sounded like both a weapon and a liability. If they could get their hands on it, they might be able to use it against Vorith. But getting close to it would be nearly impossible. We'll need a plan, Alan said finally. Something clever, something Vorith won't expect. Lisa spoke up, her voice calm but firm. What if we don't go straight for the crown? What if we use misinformation instead? We make Vorith think we're planning something big elsewhere, drawing his attention away from the moon. Daniel considered this, nodding slowly. That could work. Misdirection is powerful. But you'll still need someone on the inside to guide you once you reach the moon. Someone who knows the layout and can disable the defenses. That's where you come in, Ryan said, looking at Daniel. You've been fighting this fight longer than us. You must have contacts, resources we can use. Daniel hesitated, then sighed. All right, I'll help you. But only because I believe in what you're trying to do. If we fail, it's not just your lives on the line, it's mine too. With that, the group began hashing out the details of their plan. Over the next few hours, they worked tirelessly, piecing together strategies and contingencies. Daniel provided maps of the moon and intel on the crown's defenses, while Emily analyzed ancient texts related to the artifact. Sam tinkered with equipment, modifying tools to bypass security systems, and Lisa plotted potential escape routes. As they prepared, tensions ran high. Ryan struggled with feelings of inadequacy, comparing himself to the others. He wasn't a scientist like Emily or a strategist like Alan. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders rather than give them. But he pushed those doubts aside, focusing on the task at hand. They needed every ounce of strength and skill they could muster. Finally, the day came to put their plan into action. Disguised as Imperial maintenance workers, the crew boarded a transport ship headed for the desolate moon. The journey was long and nerve-wracking, the silence broken only by the occasional crackle of static from the ship's comms. Each member of the team rehearsed their roles silently, running through scenarios in their minds. When they arrived, the moon's surface greeted them with biting winds and endless storms. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating jagged rocks and barren plains. The crown's location was marked by a massive structure carved into the side of a mountain, a fortress designed to withstand any attack. This is it, Alan said, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. Stick to the plan, stay sharp. The team moved quickly, sticking to the shadows as they approached the fortress. Automated drones patrolled the perimeter, their sensors scanning for intruders. Sam worked his magic, hacking into the system to disable the drones temporarily. One by one, they slipped past the defenses and entered the compound. Inside, the air was damp and cold, the walls lined with glowing crystals that pulsed faintly. The crown was housed in a chamber deep within the fortress, protected by layers of security. As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, Daniel guided them via comlink, warning them of traps and hidden dangers. At one point, they encountered a patrol of Imperial guards. Ryan signaled for the others to stay back while he dealt with the threat. Moving silently, he crept up behind the guards and knocked them unconscious before they could sound the alarm. It was risky, but it bought them precious time. Finally, they reached the chamber. The crown sat atop a pedestal in the center of the room, surrounded by shimmering energy fields. Its surface was etched with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when viewed from different angles. Despite its beauty, there was an aura of menace about it, a sense that it was alive. Watching them, Emily stepped forward, her heart pounding. She activated a device Sam had built, attempting to disable the energy fields. Sparks flew as the machine whirred to life, and for a moment, it looked like it might work. Then, alarms blared throughout the fortress. "They know we're here," Lisa shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "Keep going," Alan ordered. "We're not leaving without the crown." Emily worked faster, sweat dripping down her face. Finally, with a loud crack, the energy fields collapsed. She grabbed the crown, feeling its weight in her hands. But as soon as she touched it, visions flooded her mind, images of destruction, chaos, and despair. Worlds burning, civilizations crumbling, all because of this single object. "We need to get out of here," Ryan yelled, snapping her back to reality. The team sprinted toward the exit, pursued by waves of Imperial soldiers. Explosions rocked the fortress as automated defenses activated, collapsing sections of the building behind them. Just as they reached the surface, a massive drone descended from the sky, blocking their path. Without hesitation, Ryan charged forward, engaging the drone in a desperate battle. Bullets ricocheted off its armor as he dodged and weaved, searching for a weak spot. Meanwhile, Sam and Lisa worked together to hotwire a nearby transport vehicle, preparing it for a quick getaway. "Ryan, move!" Alan shouted, firing his weapon to cover him. Ryan dove aside just as the drone exploded, sending debris flying in all directions. The team piled into the transport and sped away, the fortress collapsing in their wake. Behind them, the moon's surface cracked and splintered, destabilized by the destruction of the facility. As they escaped into the safety of space, Alan turned to Emily, who still clutched the crown tightly. "Did you see anything?" he asked quietly. She nodded, her expression haunted. "I saw what it can do. And I saw what it will do if we let it fall into the wrong hands." Alan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't. Whatever happens next, we're ready." But as the Odyssey loomed ahead, waiting to welcome them home, none of them realized the true cost of what they had taken, and the storm that was about to follow. The transport ship carrying the crew of the Odyssey docked with their starship, and as soon as they stepped aboard, the weight of what they had done hit them like a wave. The crown of eternity was now in their possession, but it felt less like a victory and more like a burden. Emily held the artifact carefully, her hands trembling slightly. She hadn't spoken since they escaped the moon, and the others gave her space. Sensing that she needed time to process, Alan gathered the team in the briefing room, where the crown sat on the table between them, glowing faintly. Its intricate patterns shifted subtly, almost as if it were alive. Everyone stared at it, unsure of what to say. The silence stretched until Ryan finally broke it. "So what's the plan?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with unease. "We've got the crown. Now what?" "We figure out how to use it," Alan replied firmly, though even he sounded uncertain. "If we can harness its power, we might be able to turn the tide against Vorath." Emily shook her head, speaking for the first time since they'd returned. "It's not that simple. When I touched it, I saw things. Horrible things. Entire worlds destroyed, civilizations wiped out. This thing isn't just a weapon, it's a curse." "Then why did Vorath keep it?" Lisa asked, frowning. "If it's so dangerous, why didn't he destroy it?" "Because he's arrogant." Daniel Hart chimed in, leaning against the wall. He had joined the crew temporarily after helping them infiltrate the moon. Vorath believes he's above consequences. He thinks he can control the crown without letting it control him. But no one can, not completely. Sam rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Maybe we don't need to use it directly. What if we find another way? Like, I don't know, using it as leverage or something? That could work, Alan said slowly. But we'd need proof that we have it and proof that we're willing to use it if necessary. Or, Emily suggested hesitantly, we could show people the truth about it, expose what it really is. If the Empire's citizens knew how dangerous it is, maybe they'd rise up against Vorath themselves. Ryan snorted. You think they'll believe us over their own leader? They worship the guy. They might, Daniel interjected. Especially if we make it personal. Show them that Vorath's obsession with the crown is putting their lives at risk. Alan nodded, considering the idea. All right, let's split up. Emily, you and Sam dig deeper into the crown's history. See if there's any way to amplify its signal, make its effects visible to everyone. Lisa, plot a course back toward Imperial space. We'll broadcast a message once we're in range. Ryan, prep the weapon systems. If this goes sideways, we'll need to defend ourselves. The team dispersed, each member focused on their task. In the science lab, Emily and Sam worked tirelessly, analyzing the crown's properties. It wasn't easy. The artifact resisted their attempts to scan it, emitting pulses of energy that disrupted their equipment. Frustration mounted as hours turned into days, but Emily refused to give up. This thing doesn't want to be understood, Sam muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. It's like it's fighting back. It knows we're trying to uncover its secrets, Emily replied softly. Her eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but her determination remained unshaken. Keep going, we're close, I can feel it. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Lisa monitored their progress through Imperial territory. The closer they got, the more tense the atmosphere became. Imperial patrols were everywhere, their ships scanning for any sign of intruders. To avoid detection, Lisa relied on stealth maneuvers, slipping through gaps in their defenses like a shadow. You're doing great, Alan said, standing beside her. His tone was calm, but his knuckles were white from gripping the railing. Just a little further. I hope you know what you're doing, Lisa replied, glancing at him briefly. If they catch us broadcasting that message, we're dead. We won't get caught, Alan assured her, though he wasn't entirely convinced himself. Down in the armory, Ryan checked and rechecked the ship's weapon systems. Every missile, every turret, every defensive shield was primed and ready. He hated feeling powerless, and preparing for battle gave him a sense of control, even if it was fleeting. As the Odyssey approached the edge of Imperial communications range, the crew gathered in the main hall. The crown rested on a pedestal at the center of the room, surrounded by cameras and recording equipment. Alan stood in front of it, addressing the team. This is it, he said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Once we send this message, there's no turning back. Vorath will know we have the crown, and he'll come after us with everything he's got. Are we ready? One by one, the crew nodded. There was fear in their eyes, but also resolve. They had come too far to back down now. Begin transmission, Alan ordered. Lisa activated the broadcast system, sending the message across every frequency used by the Empire. On the screen, Alan appeared, his expression calm but commanding. Behind him, the crown pulsed with light, its eerie glow casting shadows across the walls. To the people of the Galactic Empire, Alan began, his voice clear and strong. For years, you have lived under the rule of Kael Vorath, believing him to be your protector. But the truth is far darker than you realize. Vorath's power comes not from strength or wisdom, but from an ancient artifact known as the Crown of Eternity. This crown is not a symbol of greatness, it is a harbinger of destruction. He paused, letting his words sink in. Entire civilizations have fallen because of this object. Worlds have burned, lives have been lost, all in the name of Vorath's greed. He keeps it hidden, feeding you lies while he plots your doom. But we are here to expose the truth. Look around you. Ask yourselves why your homes are crumbling, why your resources are dwindling. It is not because of rebellion or weakness, it is because Vorath cares only for himself. Behind Alan, Emily activated a device connected to the crown. A surge of energy erupted from it, creating holographic images of devastated planets and broken cities. These visions filled the screens of every Imperial citizen watching. Undeniable proof of the crown's destructive power. The choice is yours. Alan continued. Will you continue to bow to a tyrant who values nothing but his own survival? Or will you rise up and take back your freedom? The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. For a moment, there was no response. Then, chaos erupted. Across the Empire, protests broke out as citizens demanded answers. Some rallied behind rebel leaders like Daniel Hart, while others fled their homes, fearing retaliation from Vorath's forces. On board the Odyssey, the crew watched the aftermath unfold with mixed emotions. They had succeeded in spreading the truth, but at what cost? Now comes the hard part, Alan said grimly. Vorath won't let this go unanswered. We need to prepare for war. As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the ship. An Imperial fleet had emerged from hyperspace, surrounding them. Dozens of warships loomed on the screens, their weapons trained on the Odyssey. They found us, Lisa said, her voice tight with panic. Shields up. Ryan barked, rushing to his station. Arm all weapons. Alan took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. Everyone, hold on. This is going to get messy. The first volley of missiles struck the ship's shields, shaking the entire vessel. Explosions rocked the corridors as the crew scrambled to respond. In the engine room, Sam fought to keep the power systems online, his hands flying over the controls. Up on the bridge, Lisa dodged falling debris, her eyes glued to the navigation console. Evasive maneuvers. Alan shouted, "Keep them off balance." Despite being outnumbered, the Odyssey proved surprisingly resilient. Its sleek design and advanced technology allowed it to weave through the enemy ships, delivering precise counterattacks. Ryan coordinated the weapon's fire, targeting weak points in the Imperial vessel's armor. One by one, the enemy ships fell, their hulls breached and engines disabled, but the battle was far from over. More ships arrived, reinforcements sent by Vorath himself. The odds were stacked against them, and the crew knew it. Still, they fought with every ounce of strength they had. Refusing to surrender. In the midst of the chaos, Emily made a decision. She grabbed the crown and ran to the communications room. Activating the system, she amplified the artifact's energy, broadcasting its presence across the entire battlefield. The effect was immediate. Imperial soldiers froze, overwhelmed by visions of destruction and despair. Even some of the ships faltered, their crews paralyzed by the crown's influence. "What are you doing?" Alan demanded, bursting into the room. "You said using it would be dangerous." "And it is," Emily admitted, her voice strained. "But we don't have a choice. This is the only way to stop them." The crown's energy surged again, brighter and stronger than before. For a moment, it seemed like the entire galaxy held its breath. Then, with a deafening roar, the crown shattered, its fragments dissolving into nothingness. The visions faded, leaving the battlefield eerily quiet. Outside, the Imperial fleet retreated, their morale shattered. Back on the Odyssey, the crew stared at each other in disbelief. They had won, but at a tremendous cost. "We did it," Lisa whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We actually did it." Alan nodded, exhaustion etched into his features. "Yeah, but this isn't the end. Not yet." As the ship limped away from the battlefield, battered but intact, the crew knew their fight was far from over. The crown was gone, but Vorath still lived. And as long as he drew breath, the Odyssey drifted silently through space, its hull scarred from the battle. The crew moved slowly, their bodies aching and their minds heavy with exhaustion. They had achieved something monumental. They had broken Voreth's grip on the Empire, but the victory felt hollow. The crown of eternity was gone, destroyed in Emily's desperate gamble to save them all. Yet, even as they patched up the ship, they knew the war wasn't over. Voreth was still alive. And if there was one thing they had learned about him, it was that he didn't take defeat lightly. In the medical bay, Sam stitched up a deep gash on his forearm, while Lisa tended to a nasty bruise on her leg. Neither spoke much, their silence filled with unspoken fears. Across the room, Ryan sat slumped in a chair, staring at the floor. His hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight. Alan entered quietly, taking in the scene before speaking. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Ryan looked up, his expression grim. "We barely made it out of there, Captain." "If Emily hadn't done what she did," he trailed off, shaking his head. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up." "We'll manage," Alan replied, though his tone lacked conviction. "We've come too far to give up now." Emily walked in moments later, her face pale and drawn. She avoided meeting anyone's eyes, guilt weighing heavily on her shoulders. Destroying the crown had been necessary, but the act haunted her. She could still feel its energy coursing through her veins, its whispers echoing in her mind. What if she had made a mistake? What if they needed it to finish Voreth once and for all? "Emily," Alan said softly, noticing her unease, "you did the right thing. We couldn't let Voreth use the crown again, not after everything we saw." "No," she murmured, though her voice wavered. "But I destroyed our only leverage. Without the crown, how do we stop him?" Alan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll find another way. We always do." Meanwhile, aboard the Imperial flagship, Kael Voreth paced furiously in his throne room. His golden armor gleamed under the harsh lights, but his usual air of calm authority was gone. His face was twisted with rage, his movements jerky and erratic. Around him, advisors and officers cowered, afraid to speak or even breathe too loudly. "The crown is gone!" Voreth roared, slamming his fist onto the armrest of his throne. How could this happen? It was supposed to be untouchable. No one dared answer. Instead, they exchanged nervous glances, waiting for the storm to pass. Finally, one brave officer stepped forward, a young man named Yarrick, who had risen quickly through the ranks due to his loyalty to Voreth. "My lord," Yarrick began hesitantly, "the humans broadcast your secrets across the galaxy. Citizens are rising up against us. Our forces are stretched thin. We must act swiftly to regain control." Voreth stopped pacing and turned to glare at him. "And what would you suggest, Yarrick? Should I beg for forgiveness? Bow to those pathetic rebels?" "No, my lord," Yarrick replied quickly, bowing his head. "But perhaps we can use their tactics against them, expose their weaknesses. Show the people that humanity is no better than us." A flicker of interest crossed Voreth's face. "Go on." Yarrick swallowed hard but continued. "They rely on unity, on hope. If we can shatter that, if we can make them doubt themselves, then their rebellion will crumble. Divide and conquer, my lord." Voreth smirked, a cruel light returning to his eyes. "Clever. Very well, Yarrick, make it so. But remember, if you fail me, there will be consequences." Yarrick bowed deeply, relief washing over him. As he left the room, Voreth turned back to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Humanity had humiliated him, mocked him, and taken away his greatest weapon. But he wasn't finished yet. Far from it. Back on the Odyssey, the crew gathered in the briefing room to discuss their next move. The ship's systems were stable enough to travel, but they needed a plan. Alan stood at the head of the table, his expression serious. "Voreth won't stay quiet for long," he said. "He'll retaliate, and when he does, we need to be ready. Any ideas?" Daniel Hart, who had remained with the crew, leaned forward. "We strike first. Hit him where it hurts in his pride. He thinks he's invincible, but we've proven otherwise. If we can expose more of his lies, weaken his hold on the Empire, we might stand a chance." "What about Earth?" Lisa asked. "If we go after Vorath directly, won't he target our home planet?" "That's why we need allies," Daniel replied. "We rally the rebel factions, unite them under one banner. Together, we can protect Earth while taking the fight to Vorath." Alan nodded thoughtfully. "It's risky, but it's our best shot. Emily, Sam, start reaching out to the rebel cells we've identified. See if they're willing to join us. Ryan, prep the weapons systems. We may not have the crown, but we still have firepower. Lisa, plot a course to the nearest rebel stronghold. Let's see what kind of support we can gather." The team dispersed, each member focused on their task. In the communications lab, Emily and Sam worked tirelessly, sending encrypted messages to rebel leaders scattered across the galaxy. Some responded immediately, eager to join the fight. Others were hesitant, unsure if humanity could truly deliver on its promises. But slowly, a coalition began to form. Days passed, and the Odyssey arrived at a hidden rebel base nestled within an asteroid field. Dozens of ships awaited them, their crews cheering as the human vessel approached. For the first time in weeks, the crew felt a glimmer of hope. As they disembarked, they were greeted by representatives from various rebel factions. Each group brought unique skills and resources to the table, some specialized in sabotage, others in intelligence gathering. Together, they formed a formidable force. During a strategy meeting, Daniel addressed the assembled leaders. "We've been fighting Vorath for years, but separately, we've never been strong enough to defeat him. Now, thanks to these humans, we have a real chance. But we must act decisively. Every moment we delay gives Vorath time to regroup." One rebel leader, a grizzled veteran named Maris, raised a hand. "What's the plan? How do we take down someone like Vorath?" Alan stepped forward, taking charge. "We hit him where it matters most, his image. He rules through fear and propaganda. If we can dismantle that, his empire will collapse. We'll launch coordinated attacks on key targets, broadcasting our victories to the galaxy. At the same time, we'll infiltrate his inner circle, feeding him false information and sowing discord among his ranks." The rebels nodded, impressed by the clarity of the plan. Over the next few days, they prepared for the offensive, pooling their resources and sharing intel. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation and determination. Finally, the day came to put their plan into action. The fleet set course for the Empire's capital world, where Vorath's power was strongest. Along the way, they launched smaller strikes on Imperial outposts, drawing attention and spreading chaos. Each success bolstered their morale, proving that Vorath's reign was not as unshakable as it seemed. When they reached the capital, the sight was breathtaking. A massive orbital defense network surrounded the planet, bristling with weapons and shield generators. Breaking through would be nearly impossible, but not entirely. "All right, everyone," Alan said over the comms. "This is it. Stick to the plan, stay sharp. And remember, we're doing this for every person who's ever suffered under Vorath's rule." The battle began with a barrage of missiles and laser fire, lighting up the darkness of space. Rebel ships darted between Imperial vessels, their agility giving them the upper hand. On the ground, teams led by Daniel and Ryan sabotaged key facilities, disrupting communications and supply lines. Amidst the chaos, Emily monitored broadcasts from the Empire, searching for signs of weakness. Her heart skipped a beat when she intercepted a transmission from Vorath himself. He sounded furious, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You think this changes anything?" He snarled. "You think you can destroy me? I am eternal. I am the Empire." Emily relayed the message to Alan, who smiled grimly. He's cracking. Keep pushing. Hours turned into days as the battle raged on. Slowly but surely, the rebels gained ground, their numbers swelling as more citizens joined the fight. Vorath's forces began to falter, their resolve crumbling under the weight of overwhelming opposition. Then, during a daring raid on the Imperial Palace, Ryan found himself face to face with Vorath. The tyrant stood alone in his throne room, his golden armor dented and scorched. His eyes burned with hatred as he drew a blade, challenging Ryan to a duel. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, gripping his own weapon tightly. This was it, the final confrontation. No tricks, no strategies. Just two men, locked in combat. The clash was brutal, both fighters exchanging blows with ferocity. Ryan fought with everything he had, channeling his anger and frustration into every strike. Vorath was skilled, but he was also arrogant, underestimating his opponent. With a final powerful swing, Ryan disarmed him, sending the blade clattering to the floor. Vorath stumbled back, breathing heavily. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. You cannot win," he gasped. "The Empire will endure." "It's over," Ryan said coldly, raising his weapon. "Your empire is dead." With a swift motion, he struck the killing blow, ending Vorath's reign once and for all. As the tyrant fell, the palace shook, its foundations collapsing under the strain of the battle outside. The galaxy was quiet for the first time in decades. The fall of Kael Vorath had sent shockwaves through every corner of the Empire, leaving behind a void that no one knew how to fill. On the Odyssey, the crew gathered on the bridge, watching as reports poured in from across the stars. Planets once ruled by fear were now rising up, their people reclaiming their freedom. Smiles spread across faces that had known only despair for generations, but the mood aboard the ship was bittersweet. Yes, they had won. They had toppled a tyrant who had oppressed billions, yet the cost of victory weighed heavily on them. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made, and scars, both visible and invisible, remained. Alan stood at the helm, his hands resting on the railing as he stared out at the endless expanse of space. He felt pride, certainly, but also an overwhelming sense of responsibility. The Empire was gone, but what came next would shape the future of the galaxy. "We did it," Lisa said softly, breaking the silence. She leaned back in her chair, exhaustion evident in her voice. "It's over." "Not entirely," Alan replied without turning around. His tone was calm but firm. "Vorath may be dead, but the damage he caused runs deep. We can't just walk away and leave these worlds to figure things out on their own." Emily nodded, standing beside him. "He's right. Rebuilding won't happen overnight. These planets need help, resources, leadership, hope. If we don't step in, someone else might try to take Vorath's place." Ryan walked in moments later, still wearing his battle-worn armor. His expression was grim, though there was a flicker of relief in his eyes. "I've seen enough dictators rise and fall to know this isn't the end. People are scared, angry. Someone will try to exploit that. Then we stop them before they get the chance," Alan said firmly. "We'll work with the rebels, the citizens, anyone willing to build something better. This is our chance to make sure history doesn't repeat itself." In the days that followed, the crew of the Odyssey worked tirelessly to stabilize the situation. Rebel leaders convened aboard the ship to discuss the formation of a new government, a coalition of representatives from every planet, species, and faction affected by the Empire. The debates were heated, with old rivalries threatening to derail progress, but Daniel Hart played a crucial role in keeping tensions in check. His experience as a former Imperial officer gave him unique insight into how systems of power operated, and he used that knowledge to guide the discussions toward compromise. Emily and Sam focused on humanitarian efforts, coordinating shipments of food, medicine, and supplies to devastated worlds. Many of these planets had been stripped bare by Voratha's greed, their resources funneled into the Empire's coffers. Emily struggled with the scale of the suffering she witnessed, but she found solace in small victories. Children smiling as they received fresh water, families reunited after years apart. Each act of kindness reminded her why they had fought so hard. Lisa and Ryan took charge of security operations, patrolling key regions to prevent opportunistic warlords from seizing control. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was necessary. They encountered resistance in some areas, remnants of Varath's loyalists unwilling to let go of the past. But with the combined strength of the rebel fleet and local militias, they managed to quell most threats before they could grow. Throughout it all, Alan remained the steady hand guiding the mission. He met regularly with rebel leaders, offering advice when needed, but always deferring to their decisions. Humanity's role, he insisted, was not to dominate or dictate, but to support. The galaxy belonged to everyone, not just one species or faction. One evening, as the Odyssey orbited a newly liberated planet, the crew gathered in the mess hall for a rare moment of rest. The room buzzed with quiet conversation, laughter occasionally, breaking through the hum of activity. For the first time in months, the weight of the war seemed distant, almost dreamlike. "I never thought I'd see the day," Sam said, raising a glass of synthetic juice in a mock toast. "Vorath gone, the Empire in ruins, feels like a miracle." "A miracle we earned," Ryan added, leaning back in his chair. "Don't forget all the blood and sweat it took to get here." "No one's forgetting," Emily said quietly. She glanced at Alan, who sat at the far end of the table, lost in thought. "Do you think we'll ever go home?" Alan looked up, startled by the question. "Home? Earth?" she clarified. "Do you think we'll make it back? Or are we stuck cleaning up the mess forever?" Alan smiled faintly, though there was sadness in his eyes. "We'll go home eventually. But Earth isn't the only home we have anymore. This galaxy, it's part of us now. Whether we like it or not, we're tied to it." There was truth in his words, and the others nodded in agreement. They had started this journey as soldiers, explorers, and survivors. Now they were something more, builders of a new era, architects of peace. Weeks turned into months as the coalition began to take shape. Representatives from countless worlds came together to draft a charter, laying the foundation for a united Galactic Council. Disagreements arose, of course, but they were resolved through dialogue rather than violence, a stark contrast to the Empire's methods. Slowly, trust began to form where hatred had once festered. During one such meeting, Alan addressed the assembly. "This isn't going to be easy," he admitted. "There will be challenges ahead, conflicts we can't foresee. But if we face them together, if we remember why we fought against tyranny in the first place, then I believe we can create something truly special." His words resonated deeply, earning applause from those present. When the session ended, Daniel approached him, a look of gratitude on his face. "You've done more than anyone could have asked," Daniel said. "You didn't just bring down Vorath, you gave us a reason to hope again." Alan shook his head modestly. "Hope isn't mine to give. It belongs to everyone who stood up and said enough. All we did was light the spark." As the coalition grew stronger, the Odyssey prepared to return to Earth. Their mission was complete, and while the galaxy still faced challenges, it was no longer humanity's sole responsibility to solve them. The crew packed up their belongings, saying goodbye to allies and friends they had made along the way. On the final day, as the ship drifted away from the newly formed capital world, Alan stood on the bridge one last time. Behind him, the others watched silently, each lost in their own thoughts. The view screen displayed Earth in the distance, its blue-green surface glowing softly against the blackness of space. "It feels strange," Lisa said finally. "Going back after everything that's happened." "Strange but good," Emily replied, smiling. "We've changed, haven't we, all of us?" Ryan chuckled dryly. "Yeah, well, let's hope Earth hasn't changed too much. I could use a decent cup of coffee." They laughed, the sound easing some of the tension that had lingered between them. For all the hardships they had endured, they had grown closer, not just as teammates but as family. When the Odyssey touched down on Earth, crowds gathered to welcome them home. News of their victory had spread quickly, and the planet celebrated their return as heroes. Politicians praised their bravery, reporters clamored for interviews, and strangers thanked them with tears in their eyes. It was overwhelming, but also heartwarming. That night, the crew sat together on a hill overlooking the city lights. The sky above was clear, dotted with stars that seemed impossibly bright. Alan raised a bottle of champagne someone had gifted them, holding it high. "To the future," he said simply. "Whatever it holds." The others echoed the sentiment, clinking their glasses together. As they sat there, laughing and reminiscing, they knew life would never be the same. They had seen the worst of what the galaxy had to offer, and the best. And though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its share of challenges, they faced it with courage, unity, and hope. Because in the end, that was what mattered most.